So some people may join on, and that's fine.
All right. So I am going to go ahead and get started since we have it at 6 o'clock. Hi, everyone. I'm Shaniqua Davis, the ag agent for Gregg County. A couple of agents and myself, as well as specialists, put these series together. Our agent in Tyler County, Jacob Spivey, Houston County, Joe Smith, as well as Dr. Olson and Dr. Banna, we went together and came up with a series to provide for everybody right now whenever you can't hold your regular monthly meetings or larger programs. Today, we're going to be talking about herbicide and insecticide cost per acre spreadsheets. This is very informal, so if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask your questions or put them in the chat box, and I will be monitoring those. So with that, we will go ahead and get started. So Vanessa, if you're ready, it's all yours.
I'm ready. Thank you, Shaniqua. So like she said, my name is Vanessa Coyer Olson. Most of you know me, as well as I know most of you that are joining us this evening. Welcome. Thank you for participating. We appreciate you participating and giving us feedback in regards to how well you think these events go. And if you have any issues with logging onto Zoom or any audio or visual issues, please feel free to reach out to one of us. We'll do our best to try to help you. So tonight we're going to talk about a publication of sorts. It's actually a downloadable tool, a resource that myself and Dr. Banta put together. I'll give more credit to Dr. Banta. He is very OCD and he loves spreadsheets. Seeing as he has a family farm, and he keeps up with a lot of the economics as well as the decisions on that family farm, and so he builds a lot of spreadsheets for various things, and some of those he may have shared with some of you in other aspects of beef cattle production. But he had built one to determine the cost per acre of different herbicides and insecticides, because unfortunately, most of us make our decisions. Hopefully, we're identifying a weed, getting a recommendation from our county extension agent or from a specialist or even from a retailer possibly. But then a lot of times we're making those decisions based on the cost of the product, whether it comes in a 2.5 gallon jug or it comes in 20 ounces, or maybe we're buying a larger quantity and we're looking at kind of that sticker price. And for a lot of our products, as we'll look at tonight, they will give you a sticker price shock if that is the only aspect that you look at. But when we start to think about and look at, we're using different rates for these different products. And so a 2.5 gallon jug of one product may last us for several years, especially if we're using it at a lower rate. So when we look at the cost per acre, it becomes oftentimes much more economical than a product that is cheaper on a per gallon basis or a unit basis. So we're going to talk about the spreadsheet. We're actually going to look at it, but first and foremost, I want to guide you on how to locate the spreadsheet. Now, you can always reach out to myself or Dr. Banta. We're happy to email that to you directly if you would prefer, but we can all locate it from our computers at home fairly easily. If hopefully all of you are familiar with my Forage Facts website, it's an excellent resource, and this is the primary location where we house this spreadsheet. Now we do update it every year, so from year to year you may want to check to see if there's been any changes. Sometimes, especially right now and for the next couple of years, we're going to have some new products. We had a new product come out this year from Corteva. We'll probably have a few more over in the next 2 to 3 years. So we'll add those as they come out to keep the spreadsheet up to date and relevant. So you can go to my Forage Facts website, foragefacts.tamu.edu. This is what the homepage looks like. You can Google Forage Facts or whatever search engine you use, and that should bring you to this website very easily as well, or you can put in the foragefacts.tamu.edu. You can just type that into Google or type that into the address bar at the top. So this is what the homepage looks like. So to find the spreadsheet, we're going to select from that top row of options or tabs. They kind of look like file folder tabs. We're going to select publications. So when you select publications, this is what the publications website or part of the site looks like. Now I have grouped the publications in categories. To make it even easier, I put the spreadsheet at the very top of the list. So you don't even have to scroll down the page. Obviously, there are other publications in regards to forage management. You can see the next under the spreadsheet, you can see weed control and utilization of herbicides. So right there under that spreadsheet that gives you herbicide or has herbicide information, you can look at those publications in regards to answering some recommendations that you might be looking for, or some best management practices. And of course, there's other publications you can scroll and locate those, but I tried to group them instead of they were previously just kind of randomly on there. And that's really hard to find anything. I like to be organized, or try to be organized. And so I felt like that would be much easier to be able to locate those if they're kind of in a category. So we put the spreadsheet at the very top. So when you click on that, the blue wording that says herbicide and insecticide costs per acre spreadsheet, unfortunately, instead of it magically downloading it for you, takes you to yet another page. I have failed to A, take the time, or B, figure out how to avoid that additional step. But for right now, it's just one more click. So you'll come to this page. There's really no pictures, so it's not very pretty. You will see once again in a little bit, a lowercase text, kind of hyphenated. You'll see the same text, herbicide and insecticide cost per acre spreadsheet. This one indicates that it was updated in February of 2020. So we'll update it every year at the beginning of the season, and in hopes to have all of the information and capitalize on new products that potentially have come out. So once you click on that, it will automatically open the spreadsheet within your web browser. So very similar if you use Google Docs or Google Documents. You may have seen a Google Doc that was shared with you from family members or someone in an organization. It will look like this. Now you can manipulate, or you can use this Excel kind of in this Google document format if you want to. But I personally would rather have it on my computer. So if I make change, I can save it and it's saved on my computer, and I don't know where it is in the cloud or within Google Docs if I don't have a Google account potentially. So the best thing to do is to hit download in the upper right hand corner where that blue arrow indicates, and that will download that document onto your computer. Now, depending on your user interface, your computer, or even your web browser, it may ask you where to save that before it actually downloads it. Or for my computer, which is a Mac and Apple product, it downloads it and I have a download folder, and that's where it automatically goes. And then I can move it to wherever I want it, if I want it on my desktop, or if I have another folder that I want to keep it in. So then you can download that. All right, so once you've downloaded it, we are going to pause share for a minute so I can, or stop share for a minute so I can switch, because now I want you to actually see what the spreadsheet looks like on your computer. And let's see, get back to my Zoom so I can share the right screen. All right, so let's see if I can make this viewable. All right, so hopefully this is what the document will actually look like when you open it in Excel. So you will notice at the very bottom, if you're familiar with Excel, you have different tabs. And our tabs are labeled so you know which one's which. Our different tabs, we have a directions page for the herbicide sheet, which is, so this is what we're looking at right now, is the directions for the herbicide sheet. You can print this. This is potentially a very small print if you're looking at it at this particular size. Obviously, we do have the option in the far right corner of our Excel to make it larger. Obviously, that reduces how much content fills our screen, but it makes it a little bit more legible at that point. If you decide you want to print these directions off so you can look back at them when you're actually using the spreadsheet, you can do that. You can go to File and Print, and we've set it up so it just prints the directions, and it fits very nicely on one page. It doesn't have all the grids. You won't have that issue unless you've changed your page orientation, where you end up with 6 pages and part of your text is on all 6 pages and it's like a puzzle and you have to put it together. Sometimes that can happen in Excel, but we fixed it so it prints a very nice single page or on a single page. So this gives you all of the information, the directions on how to use the spreadsheet, what the different columns mean, what the information within those columns actually is. It gives you definitions. There is also on the directions page, you will notice in row 9 right here, there is a link for the CDMS website where you can locate herbicide labels. So if you've ever listened to one of my weed ID, weed control presentations, I talk about looking for, or obviously reading the label and then acquiring those labels prior to potentially buying the product, or maybe once you've purchased the product, so it's not in a miniature size that often comes on those bottles or those gallon bottles, all folded up and taped to the side. So that's a direct link. It'll take you to the CDMS website, and then you can locate labels for the different products or a product that you're specifically looking at or trying to make decisions about. So we're going to talk about the different columns, but I wanted to show you that this is the direction website, the direction portion, so you can read this or print this off. So as you're looking at the actual spreadsheet, it will help guide you. It'll define some of those different columns that you're going to see here in a second. So the next tab is the actual herbicide cost per acre portion of the spreadsheet. So I'm going to make this a little bit larger so we can see a little bit more clearly. So across the top row, we have the titles of our columns. So as you go from left to right, you have product name. So those are the names that we are most familiar with. People are going, you ask for a recommendation, a lot of times they're going to say, I'll do the same thing, Grazon Next HL or Grazon P+D. So those trade names or those product names are what will be listed in column A. In column B, you'll have the herbicide's common name, and that is often an or multiple active ingredients. In column C, you have active ingredients in pounds per gallon. So you'll notice if we look at Milestone, which is a generic broadleaf herbicide, the active ingredients are aminopyrrolid. In column B, it's in a percentage. So 40.6% of that gallon, or of that 2.5 gallon, or of that 200 gallon tote, or what have you, is 40.6% aminopyrrolid. And then if you look at active ingredients, it's 2 pounds per gallon of aminopyrrolid. So 2 pounds per unit. In this situation, it's per gallon. So that is listed for all, that is included for all of our product names. We have, or I'll get to that in a second. So the fourth column under D is the site of action group. So those are in numbers. So those numbers are an indication kind of the mode of action, is a way that is classifying the mode of action of that herbicide. So they group them in a number. So inside of that number, you may have different products that have the same mode of action. So you will notice this first several rows from Milestone down to Sendero, all of those rows are shaded the same color, kind of a pale blue, pale green, pale bluish green, whatever, pale teal, whatever color you want to call it. And that is because they are all within that, they're all within that site of action group, and they all have the same mode of action. And the mode of action of a herbicide is how that active ingredient actually kills or controls that vegetation. So if we look at Milestone, it's a growth regulator. So as a growth regulator, aminopyrrolid disrupts the growth of that plant, of those targeted species, of those weeds. So it can interrupt that growth in multiple ways. It may potentially, depending on the active ingredient, it may halt all growth, all cellular elongation, any type of growth of that plant. It may also, in some some herbicides or some pesticides will actually kind of make the plants kind of outgrow themselves to the point that it leads to death or senescing of that vegetation. So that includes the mode of action. Now, for most of us in pasture and forage production, we tend not to really pay a lot of attention, maybe necessarily to mode of action, not nearly as much as a lot of our um, crop colleagues or crop producers in the state of Texas. But knowing the mode of action and how those plants are going to respond is a good way for others to let us know if there is crop damage. That's how TDA and other scientists can determine if a herbicide you have sprayed has drifted onto a non-target species, if it has resulted in herbicide damage. And there are physical characteristics that can determine if a plant has suffered from herbicide damage. And so knowing the mode of action, how those chemicals actually disrupt that plant growth can help determine that if there's been some kind of herbicide damage on a non-target species, even if it's potentially on our Bermuda grass. So the next column is under F is our pricing unit. Now you will notice, and this will be important as you're asking for prices, is to know what unit that product is sold in. So Milestone is more commonly sold in quarts. That's typically the smallest unit. Whereas Pastoral, HL, Grazon Next, Duracor are all sold in gallon units. Now, keep in mind, a lot of Corteva's products are now in 2.5 gallons. So as you are using this spreadsheet, when you call your retailer and price a product, if you call and ask them what's the price on Duracor, and they tell you, make sure you ask, is it for a gallon or is it 2.5 gallons? Or what are the sizes of that product that you're selling. So you may have to do some simple math, some dividing to get it down to price per gallon. And then we have our price per unit is column G. And you'll notice that column G, the numbers are in blue. So this is the only column that you can manipulate. So even if you had your cursor in another column and you hit delete, those cells are locked. So you cannot really mess up this particular spreadsheet. All the cells are locked except for that column G on the price per unit, where you can go in and manipulate that price per unit. Column H is our application rates per acre. Now, this is not, I will tell you this spreadsheet is not a replacement for reading labels, because we are not including every possible rate that you can use for a given product. A lot of times we're putting the highest rate and some mid rates and then the lowest rate of that particular product use. So make sure you're reading the label, because this sheet will not give you information on obviously the weeds that those products will control, whether or not you can mix that product with fertilizer, if it needs a surfactant or any other adjuvant. It's not going to tell you how to clean up your equipment or the jugs after use. So this is not a replacement for the label. You still need to read the label, and that is why we included the link to that website for the labels, so you can get all of that other information. It also does not provide any haying or grazing restrictions. We purposefully left that out. We thought about it, we discussed it, but I thought that we should leave it out, and Jason agreed, so that would force you guys to read the label, because the label is the law, and not reading that label will get us in trouble with TDA. So that's why sometimes all of the application rates may not be there, and they are on a per acre basis. So 3 ounces to 7 ounces on Milestone. And then it will automatically calculate your herbicide cost per acre. So I'll just randomly pick a number. We'll say Milestone is $100 per gallon. So I'll put in $100. It automatically calculates that cost per acre. So at a 3 ounce rate, that would make it $9.38 per acre. At a much higher rate, all the way down to at a 7 ounce rate, you're probably controlling some more mature plants. You're potentially controlling some woody species at a much higher rate. You're looking at 21.88 cents per acre. So that's how most of us, and why most of us have interest in this spreadsheet, is looking at those costs. some additional information, and then we'll come back to the cost. J through M is some very specific information. We've taken the active ingredient or ingredients, if there are multiple, and broken them out and calculated based on the pounds of that active ingredient in a gallon, how many pounds of active ingredient you would be spraying per acre based on a given rate. So if you were spraying 3 ounces per acre of milestone, that means you would be actually applying 0.047 pounds of aminopyralid per acre. Now, a lot of people ask, why is this important? Some of our products, or some herbicides, some pesticides, will have limits on the amount or the number of pounds of product that can be applied within a given area for a given season or for a year. So this helps us to determine how much actual aminopyralid or other active ingredient we are applying on a per acre basis. So that may help us make some decisions on products or the amount of product that we're actually going to apply, especially if there's restrictions on how many pounds or how much of an active ingredient we can put out on our property for a given period of time. So that information is included on the far right. So as we scroll down, you will notice, or as I scroll down, you will notice that that top row does not move. So even if you scroll all the way down here to the bottom, you'll still have product name, herbicide, you'll have those titles or those categories, so you know what you're looking at or where you are on that spreadsheet. Now, we have tried to include all the pasture and hay production herbicides that are most commonly used, that are commonly recommended. If there is a product, if you are looking at the spreadsheet and there's a product you think or you would like to be included, if you would let us know, we would appreciate that. We tried to be mindful about the products that we included. So as we start to look at some of the different products here, in the blue are all the products that have the active ingredient aminopyralid. When we get down to the, here are some other growth regulator products. Clopyralid is the active ingredient in a product called Clean Slate, Fluroxapyr and Vista. Those are some brush herbicides that are typically recommended or used on woody species. As we get down into the purple, all of these products contain picloram. That is the focus of these purple. So they all contain picloram as the sole or as an active ingredient. Down into the green, we get triclopyr, which is found in Remedy Ultra, Crossbow, as well as Pasture Guard. Here, the kind of at the bottom in white, we have all of our 2,4-D products, even our 2,4-D dicamba and Weedmaster. So the reason we did that is so that you can, if you get a recommendation, and that recommendation is, maybe it's Grazon P plus D, and that is recommended because of the picloram, because it's very effective on things like milkweed. So I recommend Grazon P plus D often to control things like milkweed. Picloram is very effective on milkweed. So you may want to call your retailer and get a price on Tordon 22K because it also has picloram in it. And then you could do a price comparison of Tordon 22K, straight picloram, to something like Grazon P plus D. I did call a local retailer in East Texas to get some retail prices. Grazon P plus D calculated out to be $26.50 per unit per gallon. I think it's still sold in 2.5 gallons. So I had to do some division there. And if you look at cost per acre, it's somewhere from $3.31 all the way up to, at the highest rate, at $13.25. So you can compare different products that have this same active ingredient. If you also look at these products, if they have the same active ingredient, if there's a big difference, here we'll look at Remedy Ultra and Crossbow. Both have triclopyr. Obviously, Crossbow also has 2,4-D, but you will notice the percentage of triclopyr is quite different in those products. So you will notice their use rate will be different. So the percentage or the amount of active ingredient, if that has changed, that will change the application rate. Many of you may be familiar with Grazon Next. Before it was Grazon Next HL. They changed the concentration, so the percentage of aminopyrrolid and even 2,4-D in Grazon Next HL was increased, so they could decrease your use rate, and then they could also be more economical in the packaging of that product. But all they did was change the concentration, so that would change your use rate. So it is very important that you're reading the label for the specific product that you've purchased, because the concentration of those active ingredients are going to influence that application rate, or that ounces or pints or quarts per acre that would be recommended to apply. Now, another thing that we broke out on the herbicides is on row 77, it says products often used for control of certain grass species. They may also control or have some control on broadleaf as well as brush species. So from here down, from 77 down, all of these products have activity on specific or some grassy weeds, but it will also have an impact or have control of broadleaf or brush species. So glyphosate is here. Obviously, there will be different brand names. Glystar is a brand name. Roundup may be a brand name. You will need to make sure, and I will tell you, my recommendations on glyphosate are always going to be based on a product that has 41% glyphosate. So that will be something that's very important. If someone is giving you a recommendation, especially on something like Roundup, which is a product that comes in multiple trade names, under multiple trade names, as well as there are concentrations that we can of glyphosate that we can use in a pond or in different cropping systems. So if you're asking me or if I give you a Roundup recommendation, mine is based on 41% glyphosate. If someone else is giving you a recommendation, I would ask them what percentage of glyphosate is that recommendation for, because there are different concentrations of glyphosate under different trade names. So you could still use, even if the trade name of that glyphosate product that you've purchased is not on here, if it's 41% glyphosate, this spreadsheet will still work for that product. So keep that in mind. If the trade name is not on here, look at the percentage of active ingredients and match that to a product that is listed on here, whether it's one single active ingredient or multiple active ingredients. Down here in the orange, we have all of the metsulfuron methyl products. That includes MSM60DF. There are some other just straight metsulfuron methyl products that have different trade names. They would fall in that category potentially if the active ingredient percentage is the same. And then our Cimarron products, Plus, Extra, and Max. Obviously, they have additional active ingredients that will change their use rate. That will also change what they have activity on. Cimarron Max, because of the 2,4-D, requires a license in Texas. And maybe limited in your county. So keep that in mind in regards to 2,4-D use. So down here at the bottom, we have our 2 sulfonylurea products, the sulfuron. That's a tongue twister. Try to say a word with multiple S's and multiple F's. Outrider, which has activity on Johnson grass, and we've actually added a short note that says labeled for Johnson grass. It also has activity on yellow and purple nutsedge. And then we have Pastora, which is labeled for sandburrs. We'll also have activity on Bahia grass, Prow H2O, which is a pre-emergent product, which is labeled for sandbur, has activity on some other grass species, Johnson grass, barnyard grass, some of our foxtails, even crabgrass. So, and then Velpar L, which was not marketed, not developed for any grass control, but it does have a labeling for smut grass control and Bermuda grass and Bahia grass. So that is listed on here as well. So you can compare different products. If you want to kind of see what pricing is looking like, Pastora, which is recommended for sandbur control, we're potentially coming up on that season, $16 per ounce. It is sold in ounces. So at the lowest rate, which is 1 ounce, the use rate is 1 to 1.5 ounces. Sorry about that. Use rate is 1 to 1.5 ounces per acre. So anywhere from $16 to $24 per acre. So a little bit more expensive product compared to some of our other herbicides, but it's very successful at controlling sandbur. It will also control Bahia grass. Of course, with everything, there's advantages and disadvantages. So this is the herbicide sheet. So we can compare and look at different products, the cost of products. A common question right now, especially with Corteva coming out with Duracor, which is very similar to Grazon Next, being that one of the active ingredients is aminopyrrolid. You can see here we've added Duracor to the spreadsheet this year. So if you happen to download the 2019 version, you would definitely want to download the 2020 since we've added Duracor, the newest product from Corteva. So when we compare those two, Grazon Next HL was $48 per gallon. Duracor is $96 per gallon. So you have about a $2 to $3 per acre higher cost on Duracor than Grazon Next. But whether or not you select Grazon Next or Duracor is going to be dependent on your particular situation. Because there's 2,4-D in Grazon Next, that means it requires a license. So if you don't have a license and you're looking to use aminopyrrolid, Duracor can be an option. Chaparral could be an option. Historically, Chaparral, or recently, Chaparral's been more expensive even than Duracor. Now, I didn't get a price on Chaparral, but you can call your retailer, get some of those prices, and do a comparison. So the other thing about Duracor, because it doesn't require a license. If you are in a county where you are limited on maybe the time of day that you can use products such as 2,4-D, or whether or not you can use 2,4-D, that may mean it's more beneficial for you. A product such as Duracor is going to have an advantage for you. So keep that in mind. Price should not be the only thing you think about. It is something that should be in your list, or something you should think about when making herbicide decisions. But you need to get the best recommendation, and then you need to make sure it fits within your production system. Are you sitting right beside a cotton field? Then you probably don't need to be using 2,4-D. Or you need to time your applications more appropriately with their crop season as well. So there's a lot of factors, a lot of things to think about. If you have questions about a recommendation, I'll be happy to answer those. You can reach out to me and we can visit more one-on-one about your given situation and what would work best. All right, so to go on the spreadsheet, unless there's any questions. So Shanique was monitoring that for me. So the next tab, so there's a lot of tabs down here. The third tab is another direction sheet. Now this is for the insecticide cost per acre. So once again, you can print it off. If you want to see it and compare it while you're actually looking at the spreadsheet. It's going to be fairly similar to the herbicide sheet, but obviously this time we're looking at insecticides. So products that will control things like grasshoppers, armyworms, and even potentially the Bermuda grass stem maggot, which are our most common insect pests that we deal with in forage production. So very similar, once again, we have our product name, our insecticide common name. So based on which is the percentage of a active ingredient or multiple active ingredients. Some of them have more than one. The equivalence or the pounds of that active ingredient within a gallon or a unit of that product. The mode of action classification is given a number, and then the chemical family. And we can talk a little bit more about those chemical families. Those chemical families will influence the chemical families are basically the part of the mode of action, how that insecticide kills or controls pests. And then we have added on the insecticide sheet whether or not it is labeled for grasshoppers as well as armyworms. Now, there's not a column, as you can see, for Bermuda grass stem maggot, but I will show you how you can find those products, and it's very easy within this spreadsheet. So we'll get to that. And then we have pricing unit, and then we have our price per unit, our blue numbers that we have the ability to manipulate. We have our application rates per acre. Once again, typically going to be a low use rate, a high use rate, and then mid rates. But we always start at the top with the lower rates and then increase our rate of application. And then our insecticide cost per acre in dollars. So that will change once we put in our blue numbers. All right, so we have carbaryl or 7. There are a lot of different products that have carbaryl. Carbaryl is a very common insecticide used in home and garden, lawn situations, used in all kinds of crop situations. And it's also labeled for armyworm and grasshopper control in our pastures and hay meadows. A lot of people think carbaryl is the cheapest thing that they can buy. And if you look with the numbers that I have put in, if we look down this column, it is the cheapest per unit product that I've put in. When you compare it to, Tombstone, I have $210 per gallon. Any of the Lambda-Cy halithrine products, such as Lambda-Cy, $62 per gallon. Down here to Dimilin is $157 per gallon. Previthon is $160 per gallon. Besiege is $218 per gallon. So if we looked at all these insecticides just on their price per unit, most of us would honestly pick carbaryl or 7. It's cheap. It's $42 per unit per gallon. That's the cheapest thing I can buy. It will work. It has no residual, unfortunately. But if we look at the price per unit and we start comparing carbaryl that has no residual control on armyworms or grasshoppers, at the lowest rate, it's $5.25 per acre. We get down to a product such as Dimilin 2L. Sure, it was $157 per gallon, but when you look at the cost per acre, it's no more. Even at the highest rate, it's less than $3 per acre. And Dimilin will give you 2 to 3 weeks of residual control if that forage isn't harvested. So you're getting much more out of that higher price per unit product, which is cheaper on a price per acre basis. So even though it may be harder to shell over that $157 at the retail store, in the long run, you're saving money because you have a lower cost per acre, as well as you are having some residual control as long as you're not harvesting that forage. So that means it's reducing the number of pesticide applications you have to make. It's reducing the potential loss of forage production from insect pests. So there's a lot of benefits to looking at different options and other products. Now, in some situations, for some people, carbaryl might be the way to go. But this spreadsheet helps us to make economical decisions as part of our overall pest management plan. Obviously, we need to select a product that we either have the ability to purchase because we have a license, so we can buy that product, we can use that product. We also need to make sure that it's labeled for our pasture or for our hay meadow to actually safely use in those environments. And then make sure it will actually control the pests we're trying to control, if it's grasshoppers and armyworms. And I think that's something very important with insect pest control and forages, that we do look at products that will control multiple species. That reduces the number of products that we have to purchase and can help impact, save some money and impact our economics, hopefully. So there are a lot of things to think about, unfortunately, when it comes to making pesticide decisions, but this is a tool to help us make economical decisions. So as we scroll down, you will notice this group of insecticides that are all kind of in a peachy, pale orange color. They're all highlighted that same color. If we look at chemical family, they are all pyrethroids. So pyrethroids are general use products. They're very effective. They work very quickly, but they do not have any residual. They will oftentimes, unfortunately, they break down very quickly when exposed to the air or exposed to sunlight. So that can kind of be a negative aspect or a poor quality of this chemical class. But they're very effective. They can be consumed or contact in regards to being effective. And they're very effective at controlling grasshoppers and armyworms. The reason I wanted to point out pyrethroids is, if you've heard me talk about the Bermuda grass stem maggot, our only recommendation at this time is to treat for the adult fly using a pyrethroid. So this spreadsheet will help you determine, are the products I'm looking at or the product I have a pyrethroid? Another way you can look or you can determine if it is a pyrethroid, if you will look down this list of insecticide common names within this peach colored section, you'll notice each active ingredient, the last letters of the name of that active ingredient are THRIN. So whether it's beta-cyfluthrin, cyfluthrin, gamma-cyhalothrin, lambda-cyhalothrin, zeta-cypermethrin, they all end with THRIN, and they are all pyrethroids. So there's kind of two tricks. You can use the spreadsheet to determine if you have a pyrethroid or if your product has an active ingredient that falls into that chemical family of pyrethroids, or you can look at the actual chemical name, and if it has THRIN, it falls into that chemical family of pyrethroids. So down here in the blue, so we don't have nearly as many insecticides. We still have a lot, so we're very lucky in pasture and forage production. In the blue, we've included all of these anthranilic diamides, which is Prevathon, Coragen, and as well as Besiege. Those are some of our newest products in regards to insecticides that have come out on the market probably maybe in the past 5 years. I can't remember exactly when Prevathon came on the market. They have grasshopper as well as armyworm control. Some advantages to Prevathon as well as Coragen, and even Besiege. There are no haying or grazing restrictions. They do have residual control, about 2 to 3 weeks of residual control. They do not deteriorate or break down in sunlight. The way this chemical family works, it actually causes muscle paralysis within that insect, and that obviously leads to death. So you will notice on Besiege, if you look at the active ingredients, it actually also has a pyrethroid, lambda-cyhalothrin. So Besiege would be an option that we could use to treat for grasshoppers, armyworms, and have some control of our Bermuda grass stem agate flies. So that would be one product, as opposed to, using 3 different products, one for grasshoppers, one for armyworms, and one for the Bermuda grass stem agate. Now, these products are not necessarily very inexpensive. If you look at Prevathon and Besiege, you're somewhere from $10 all the way up on Prevathon to $25 per acre. And if I remember correctly, on armyworms, I think you have some higher rates are recommended on armyworm control, so it can be quite expensive on armyworm control, and Besiege can be as well. But it does provide 2 to 3 weeks residual. Besiege will help with your Bermuda grass stem agate flies as well. So you really need to look at the overall picture, what you're trying to achieve within your production system. Now, another option, and something I recommend quite frequently, Dimilin. Dimilin 2L is a diflubenzuron. It has to be ingested. It is an insect growth regulator as a benzoylureas. So it regulates growth. So it prevents chitin, that external, especially in grasshoppers, kind of that external shell. It prevents it from growing. So unfortunately, Dimilin will not kill them instantaneously. And a lot of us, when we spray anything to kill it, whether it's a grasshopper or a goatweed, we generally spray it and want to see it die right then and there, or at least by the next day that it's dead or it's starting to wither and waste away. Now, Dimilin, it will take, because it's an insect growth regulator, it will take a couple of days before you'll actually start to see dead armyworms or dead grasshoppers. Now, because it's an insect growth regulator, the recommendation, and for that product on that label, is that you spray larvae or grasshoppers that are very small, so no larger than ½ an inch. Would really prefer them smaller even than 1/4 of an inch. So very early in their production or in their growth cycle, so when they're very small, to be effective. Now, unfortunately, especially with armyworms, when we determine we have armyworms, they are not all the same size, because we'll have multiple generations. So they'll be hatching at different times. We may have very small larvae, and then we may have some that escaped us that are a lot larger. So one recommendation is to add to our Dimilin or our diflubenzuron product to add a pyrethroid, such as lambda-cy. So if we look at our multiple products of lambda-cy halothrin, $62 per unit. If you add that to 157, it sounds really expensive. Well, if you look at the cost per acre, if you're using it at the lowest rate, it's $1.24 per acre for the lambda-cy and $1.23. So that's less than $3 at those low rates, and you're still going to have that residual control with that dimilin. And because you're using a pyrethroid, you're going to hopefully control any Bermuda grass stem maggot flies that you might have in that field as well. So once again, think about all aspects. If you have questions about what is recommended for your given pest that you're trying to control, be it a weed or an insect, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help. Use this, take advantage of this spreadsheet. It is free. It is of no cost to you. You cannot break it, so to speak. The only thing you can manipulate is the price per unit. Now, the last thing on the spreadsheet that I wanted to show you, the very last tab, is area covered. So this is a great tool. If you know your spray width by feet in the far left column, whether it's 10 feet all the way to 50, you know how fast or slow you drive. Obviously, that should be based on your terrain. You may need to go very slow to get good coverage of a given product, or if you have hog damage, that's definitely going to slow you down. So you can look if you're driving 3 miles per hour, and we'll say you have a 32 width, you're going to cover 11.64 acres per hour. So this is another tool to help you determine how much of your property are you going to cover based on your speed and your spray width. That could potentially help you determine when you spray, especially if you're trying to coordinate with weather or other farm activities. This can help you. It's just another tool. You can still, now that you've saved this to your computer, you can add other tabs. So if you wanted to add a tab for maybe create your own spreadsheet for something else, or a tab to keep up with your records, to record all the information that you need to keep as a pesticide user in regards for TDA, such as what you sprayed, when you sprayed, where did you spray. You can use these other tabs, add other tabs for additional notes for your own personal information. So you can still manipulate it in that way. Those cells within that sheet would not be locked. You could manage those how you wanted to. Now I'm going to switch, make sure we're good on chat. I'm going to switch real quick back to my PowerPoint to kind of wrap us up. Sorry for all the switching. That's how this works. So once again, the spreadsheet is not a replacement for labels. Reading labels, the website is part of that spreadsheet. You can very easily, you don't have to know the address. You can click on that blue hyperlink and it will take you to that website. You can locate your herbicide or insecticide you want more information or need more information about, and you can review that prior to using those products. So remember, the label is the law.
Going to be coming out. I think that what you went over today is a great tool for myself as well as anybody that's going to be utilizing any herbicides or insecticides. So does anybody have any questions? We'll leave it open if you want to unmute your mic as well as type it in the chat. Vanessa, there's one that says, how do I download the spreadsheet?
Okay, so Mr. Grounds, whenever you go to the Forage Facts website, let's see, I'll go back to those slides.
I did try to add the link in the chat box. It didn't pop it up as where you could click on it, but it is in the chat box.
Okay, thank you. When you look at, let's see, let me close this. All right, so from the Forage Facts website, you would select the tab that says Publications. Unfortunately, it will take you to another part of the website, another page, and then you will select the spreadsheet where it says Herbicide and Insecticide Cost per Acre Spreadsheet. That will, unfortunately, once again, take you to another website within that Forage Facts. You will have to select again the Herbicide and Insecticide Cost per Acre Spreadsheet. And then that will open the spreadsheet within a window, whether you are using Chrome or Safari or whatever your web browser is. It will most likely open it like this, and you should have an option at the very top. You'll see here in the right-hand corner that says download. If you hit download, it should automatically start downloading it to your computer. Now, it may ask you where you want it to be downloaded or saved, whether to your desktop or to a specific folder. Just pay attention to that so you can find it later. If you have issues trying to download it, just send me an email and I will email you a copy of that spreadsheet. So for some of us, that may be a bit easier just to go straight to the source. You're always welcome to do that. So I'll be happy to send that to you.
Anybody else have any other questions?
I just have a comment.
Oh, yes.
Great job, Vanessa.
Oh, thank you, Kenny. I appreciate that. Well, thank you everyone for attending. Once again, you can find my contact information on Forage Facts, and I'll be happy to help anyone via email or phone. So we look forward to seeing you guys face to face in the future for sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Vanessa.
Absolutely. Have a good night, everyone.